Hi, everyone. Welcome to Breaking the Silence, a podcast by Angels Protection, Inc., where we amplify the voices that challenge inequity, advance health justice, and reimagine what care can look like when dignity and truth are centered. I'm your host, Makaila Davis, founder and chairwoman of Angels Protection, Inc. And today's episode is a part of our Men in Medicine series, where we spotlight men in healthcare who not are only leaders in their field, but advocates, those who use their expertise, influence, and platforms to confront disparities and push medicine in service of equity. Today's conversation is not just about medicine, it's about prevention, it's about public health, it's about race, it's about access, and it's about the cost of waiting until a crisis instead of investing in care. So today we have a wonderful guest, Dr. Jeffrey, who is a nationally and globally recognized emergency physician, public health strategist, and healthcare systems innovator, whose work has transformed care delivery across more than 40 states and countries on 5 continents. He currently serves as the inaugural Surgeon General of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, where he leads national efforts focused on public health education, prevention, and community wellness across chapters nationwide. But beyond titles, Dr. Sterling is a physician who has consistently refused to accept a healthcare system that prioritizes reaction over prevention and systems over people. Dr. Sterling earned degrees from Northwestern University, the Harvard School of Public Health and Health Policy Management, and the University of Illinois College of Medicine. He completed his emergency medicine residency at Chicago's Stroger Hospital, one of the nation's busiest safety net hospitals, and later received executive education from Dartmouth Tuck's School of Business. As an emergency physician, Dr. Sterling served as the chairman and/or medical director of emergency medicine for more than 30 hospitals, including level 1 trauma centers in Milwaukee, Fort Worth, and Washington, D.C. But what makes Dr. Sterling's voice especially important today is this. He's built solutions where gaps once existed and scaled prevention where crisis was once the norm, bringing medical leadership into civic, fraternal, and community spaces where trust and impact matter most. So I just want to welcome you to the podcast today.
Thanks. I'm glad we have time to talk after all of that.
Yes. So I kind of want to start off and ask, what first drew you to emergency medicine, and how did working on the front lines of trauma and crisis shape your understanding of prevention and system failure?
That's pretty straightforward. At different points in my medical upbringing, I wanted to be a family practitioner and a pediatrician and even a psychiatrist. But when you walk into an emergency department, it either calls to you or it doesn't. Some people run toward the fires and some people run away from them. And the opportunity to give people the best chance to overcome that acute exacerbation is something that has defined my work clinically as well as in public health and otherwise. I'm a solutionist, I'm an implementationalist, and I like the pulse of emergency medicine. We like to joke in many ways. We talk about meet them, greet them, treat them, street them, but it's nowhere near that callous. It's really about responding to the call where the need is greatest. And that's been a constant in all facets of my professional career and other parts of my life.
No, I love that. So like what I'm hearing is that you have seen many different ways you wanted to go, but all of that drew you back to emergency medicine.
Well, emergency medicine actually has some lifestyle considerations attached to it as well. You know, it's a very stressful profession, but it's a very convenient profession. Full time for most emergency physicians is about a dozen days a month, which means that if you're an aspiring entrepreneur, an aspiring family person, and you want to do other things with your life, you actually have the time to do that and still have a full-time emergency medicine practice. So knowing the type of future that I plan to have, that part of it was very appealing as well. And it's very much proven out that I was able to do many things at the same time as being very productive as an emergency physician.
Wow. So it really gave you the lifestyle that you knew that you were seeking after. And also, like, at what point did you realize that saving lives inside of the emergency department, it wasn't enough, and that real impact required redesigning healthcare systems themselves?
Well, that was when I went to Harvard, and that's actually a pretty, there was a clear line in that. Growing up, in my generation, we really didn't think in terms of the types of options that exist today. You either were going to be a doctor, lawyer, policeman, teacher, or some other easily identifiable profession because that's what you saw on TV. And the ability to dream and to have nuance in your career selection wasn't really a thing. So, given that I was one of the old-fashioned guys who had aspirations on saving the world, you can't do that one patient at a time. one person at a time. So when I went to Harvard and got my public health degree, I kind of realized, wow, public health is actually the care of communities and an analogous way to physicians take care of individual patients. I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. I can do that. And true to form, that really has taken me all over the world. I've done just amazing things in multiple countries on the African continent. I've been done great work in Indonesia and Tokyo. Been to Denmark, Sweden, Norway, obviously locally in this hemisphere, Canada, Mexico, on the islands. So that's been great. But even more than that, where I am now and what I have learned, even beyond the ability to be a public health professional with a global impact, is that if we really want to have the ultimate impact in saving lives and transforming health, that doesn't occur just by being a public health professional. You have to have a wallet. You have to have financial wherewithal to actually fund the initiatives that you want to do. And that's something that Bill Gates showed pretty decisively because the impact that he made in Africa back when HIV was an epidemic, literally wiping out millions of people on the continent, just the ability to write a check and to fund foundations to stem the tide on that disease is something that we in our community, the African American community, don't have, and would do well to try to create and emulate. So that actually served as a transition to my business endeavors. I have a half a dozen different businesses globally that are successful, and the goal ultimately is to create a healthcare foundation that allows us to direct finances toward the plights that ail us both domestically and abroad. And just a hint, I'm going to skip ahead here. One example of that is that I'm actually planning on leading the largest delegation, both of the only delegation of African Americans, but the largest delegation of American physicians that's ever gone to Zimbabwe on a medical mission. And I'll be doing that in September of this year. So there's a lot to be done. But one thing that I've learned over the course of my careers has been that there's no one else coming to save us. So we have to assume the role and get about the business of healthcare if that's really what we want to do.
I appreciate that, and especially on the point of that, there's nobody coming to save us. So we need to kind of like have those boots on the ground and do the work ourselves. And also too, like you're the founder of Sterling Healthcare Implementation Firm, and then also Simcoe, America's first managed preventative health organization.
Mhm.
Also, you have a few other initiatives as well. Sci Medical Supply, AskSterlingMD.com, 72 Hours Life, and SciStems, a national physician staffing company. So, how have forming all these different organizations really shaped you to who you are today?
Well, ultimately, my businesses represent health. Healthcare and medical care are two different things. And my businesses have unfolded like petals on the flower based on the need that has existed. Shift, Sterling Healthcare Implementation Firm, has been in business over a generation now, more than 20 years, providing consulting and implementation services. It's not as much a consulting firm as it is an implementation firm, a best practice implementation company that creates solutions. Over the course of the work that I've done here, there, and everywhere, I've been presented with specific other needs. And out of those, other businesses have arisen, such as SI Medical Supply. One of the things that famously occurred during the pandemic is that the African nations were literally and figuratively last on the list of where manufacturers would ship products. And the need um, became great because you're talking about saving lives or losing lives if you aren't able to have a pipeline over there. So SI Medical Supply rose to be a master distributor. We have over 100,000 different products that we have access to and can distribute. But the goal there is to create supply where the demand is high and where disparities are real. Similarly, Systems is a medical staffing company, and again, I've done that in over 35 hospitals across the country. And what else? Yes, Ask Sterling MD. That's a telehealth and telemedicine platform. I've been doing that for quite a long time as well. Actually, I spent 13 years providing telehealth long before it came a ubiquitous thing of late. I did that with IBM in Tokyo for 13 years over there. So there's that. And the other company you mentioned is Simcoe. which is an acronym that stands for Sterling Initiatives Managed Preventive Care Organization. And what I've done with that is we're in the process of creating a different track for healthcare. As I said, healthcare and medical care are not the same thing. And what we're looking to do is to empower individuals to be the best stewards of their own healthcare. So our companies have brought together all of the best practices of health prevention and promotion, put them under one roof, and we're teaching citizens how to be empowered to take care of themselves. The current system that we have actually is a sick care paradigm where when for the most part, when disease presents, you go to the emergency department, you see your physician, you get surgery and other such things. What I'm here to tell you is that healthcare actually starts with health prevention, and we need to be engaged in health promotion. So the transformative component of this is that we want you to stay healthy so you don't have to get well. And that's what Simcoe is about. And one thing that I'll say with a matter of pride is that we've pitched this near and far, and we've had two pretty notable successes. The state of Illinois, for the last 4 years, has passed a total of $240 million for this managed preventive care organization to actually put that process in place. And halfway around the world, in Zimbabwe, as part of their effort to put in place a universal healthcare program. They have verbalized their desire to put over 90 of these facilities across their countryside as a means of teaching people to be healthy, to better take advantage of their scarce resources, and not to have to wait until disease presents before they start thinking about healthcare, because at that point in time is actually medical care. So the scope is wide, but the need is even greater, and there's probably still more to come. And as I travel across the world with just an amazing array of individuals representing so many talented talent levels and professions, we'll continue to fill in the needs. And that's what it has to be about at this point, because every time you see the statistics and see that African Americans, 9 out of the top 10 causes of death have healthcare disparities when it comes to us, and on and on and on. There's so many statistics I could throw at you that will blow your mind, but the long and short of it is that until we create solutions and implement processes to address those in a culturally sensitive and culturally specific way, we can keep expecting to be the recipient of the worst outcomes, both here and in other parts of the world.
No, I really appreciate that perspective. And also like that kind of segues to like you've successfully moved ideas from clinical insight to large scale policies, including helping pass a 30 million preventative health investment in Illinois. So what does it take to get systems to fund prevention instead of continuing to pay for crises?
Well, when I was your age, we used to talk a lot about you had to be twice as good to get half as far.
Mm.
And the long and short of it is that that may or may not be true, but what happens is that if you endeavor to be twice as good, um, eventually you will be twice as good. And as generations grow, one of the beautiful things about growing up in Chicago is that I have friends, literally people that I grew up with, played basketball with, played baseball with, went to parties with, who now were lieutenant governors and attorney generals who hold positions of power. I share a fraternity, just to use Illinois as one example. I have fraternity members that are Speaker of the House and head of the Senate Appropriations Committee. It's as you grow, your cadre grows with you and assumes positions of power. And if you represent excellence in whatever your endeavor is, you actually get seats at the table when the demand is great. And I've been welcomed, as I've just pointed out in many examples, I've been welcomed into the halls of power. And, I've sat down with a half a dozen different ministers of health in different places around the world. And I've been able to have conversations that allow me to be a voice that represents healthcare, medical care, without being apologetically Black, without being apologetic, without it being anything that one would disparagingly call DEI. Of course, when I say that, I will always stop and pause and say I'm raging Black, but the point of the matter is that excellence requires no apologies and accept no excuses. So the answer to your question is that you create ideas and you prove the case for them, you make the case for them, and then you succeed. There's always a path at which success occurs, and you just have to be patient, connected enough, and excellent enough to get it done. I love, one of my books actually is There's 72 hours in a day. Using efficiency to better enjoy every part of your life. So I speak in a lot of isms, and that also fits well with the work I do on television. And, at some point in time, you are how successful you are. And you have to be willing to be grandiose in your scope of vision and in your dreams and aspirations. But you have to then um, put the building blocks on that represent excellence. One thing that I always challenge younger individuals to do is that begin with the end in mind. Don't be afraid to dream. And every single day, take one step closer to your goal. You will actually be amazed at, if you're committed to excellence, how much progress you can make if you just take one step every single day and then look at yourself 6 months from now, look at yourself 5 years from now. You will be blown away at how a true commitment to excellence and to your desired goal gets you. So be unapologetically excellent, and you'll get there. And that's how, there's only somebody in this country is going to be president of the United States. Somebody's going to be governor, et cetera, et cetera. And somebody's going to be billionaires. You have to choose your goals wisely because you just may accomplish them. So slot yourself into levels of success that really are consistent with what you want to do. And that's what I've done. I grew up wanting to try to contribute towards saving the world. And look, lo and behold, without an extraordinary amount of unnecessary effort, I've been invited in rooms that have been allowed to contribute in ways that have really made a difference. And there's a lot more to come.
And I really appreciated that, and especially touching on like that vision. So another thing that you've seen all the way through is you created programs ranging from asthma education clinics to the first sexual assault nurse examiners program in Connecticut. So what gaps were you responding to that traditional systems were not addressing at that time?
Well, that's actually a great story. This is when my implementation company was called. And it was I've really enjoyed this. There was a gruff old Army sergeant who happened to be the Commissioner of Public Health for the state of Connecticut. And he called me, he said, Sterling, and by the way, let me interrupt myself for a second and point out to you, people always say it's who you know. I will tell you it's who knows you.
Mm,
So the phone rings and this gruff old guy calls me and says, I run the state of Connecticut's health system. We only have one children's hospital in the entire state of Connecticut. I'm closing it in 72 hours. We've had four consulting companies in here. None of them did what needed to be done. Somebody told me to call you. Can you come fix it?
mm,
So I took a crew of a dozen people down there. We spent a year down there basically rebuilding the entire healthcare facility, particularly the emergency department and other critical care considerations. And we built a center of excellence, which it is now regarded as. And part of that was realizing that there were services that were not being delivered. And one that you brought up was the appropriate level of care for survivors of sexual assault. And the everything, as I mentioned earlier, is about best practice implementation. Sometimes you have to be innovative, but sometimes there are already best practices in place. And so I was very keen on bringing the concept of sexual assault nurse examiners to the state of Connecticut, put that in place, and that actually filled a gap that now is second thought to people who were in need when that horrible occurrence existed. And then later, of course, I was able to do the same thing in Fort Worth, Texas at the county hospital, JPS Health Network, where I also served as department chair. But that's a nice example. It's a good memory because we really did get to make a difference and kept the hospital open, and now it's thriving.
wow. So like, and kind of like how you touched on, like it's not about like who you know, it's who knows you and the work that
In
you have
addition to, yes.
in addition to, and that really like to me is amazing because he heard about your work and was like, you know what, I think that you would be perfect to help get this to the next level so it doesn't shut down. And now it's thriving and it's a center of excellence, which is really important because we need hospitals.
Yeah, excellent. Like I told you before, excellence requires no apologies. And, there are many of us that would think that I would never get that phone call
Mm.
or wouldn't allow ourselves to believe that one like me could get that phone call because of the color of my skin, which is nonsense. At some level, it's true, but at the level of excellence that's often required to save a life, it becomes nonsense. And I'll tell you a real quick story about that too. That was driven home for me through my consulting and implementation firm. Because when I stopped doing business in the United States and started doing business abroad, that's when I realized that people weren't just looking at me like I would be looked at stereotypically here. They were looking at me as if I was an American. And the amount of money that I was being paid and the amount of attention that was being given to me made me realize, oh, wow. these people really are listening to everything I have to say and they're implementing everything that I have to say. And once you have created a trail of success here, there, and other places around the world, it's so much easier to come back home with that level of success and those credentials behind you to do work back here at home. So sometimes, as they say, a king is somebody a king's never recognized in his own land till after his death or until he goes away. But an expert is somebody from 60 miles away with slides. So sometimes instead of being a hometown hero, or in order to become a hometown hero, you have to leave and come back. And unfortunately, that's just how it is. But in doing that, I really discovered, much to my ongoing delight, that it's a big world out there, and that world doesn't always contain the types of shackles that we are always, day after day, being bludgeoned with and concerned about here locally.
No, I really appreciated that because that kind of like goes into also too, like you founded the Minority Association of Pre-Health Students, and that's now serving chapters at over 300 colleges nationwide. So, like building that pathway for future healthcare professionals long before diversity pipelines became common language, what barriers were you seeing and what barriers still remain today?
I often think about all the things that I've done, and you never, none of your kids are your favorite, but I think MAPS is actually my kid that I will really be defined by through the eyes of the people that receive the work that I've done. MAPS was just founded out of need. You know, when I was a second year student at Northwestern University, we had an associate dean who was famous for telling black students that, yo, you're not going to get into medical school because your GPA is too low or because this, that, or the other. There was always an excuse. And, I was destined to become a physician because my mother told me I was going to be a physician, so I wasn't accepting no for an answer. And instead of listening to this dean tell me what I couldn't be, I chose to get information from somewhere else. So when I was head of the organization at Northwestern, which was called One Step Before, I created something called the Medical School Day. And I invited deans of admissions from medical schools from all over the country. This is Northwestern, so they readily agreed to come for 50 bucks. At that time, that was a lot of money. Ended up being 500 bucks and a box lunch. And we'd sit them around and they'd all the Black, Latino, and other diverse students, and a lot of whites as well, would come and get information from the real source. And of course, me being president of the organization, I was the one that was there to greet all these deans of admission. And true to form, is who knows you, I ended up getting admitted to every medical school I applied with a 2.7 GPA. So it just goes to show you. So then I became a medical student and I served 3 terms as national chairman of the board of the Student National Medical Association. And even before that, I had been regional director for the 10 states in the Midwest. And part of what I brought to the organization was MAPS, which was the same consideration that I had experienced at Northwestern, because that experience that I had was a universal experience for Black students. And we had to make sure that we were getting accurate information. And yeah, we actually, right out of the gate, started off with about 150 chapters in colleges all over the place. The need was that great back then. And this is back in 1991, 89 to 91. So from there, we simply put a map, no pun intended, in place to a bunch of schools and partnered them with medical schools. The 140 medical schools each had a couple of affiliates. And instantly, we had an organization that created a pipeline. It's been a while now that pipelines have been a thing, but the foundation and formation of MAPS was a major contributor to that. And now there's extensions in every direction. But I'm just so proud, and I've met so many hundreds, if not thousands, of individuals that have come up through MAPS, and I'm always warmly received whenever I go back to talk to the Minority Association of Pre-Health Students and the Student National Medical Association. So just very happy to have accomplished that.
No, and I appreciate the work that you did there because I think it's really important that there are supports for pre-med and being able to network with other folks that are going into the same field with them. Um, and also too, like, what do you feel like the responsibility do academic institutions and health systems have to invest earlier and more intentionally in students of color pursuing healthcare careers?
It's really a pretty simple paradigm, and this extends to the greater country. There seems to be some notion now that diversity is a favor. If America is going to continue to be great and to compete with other nations around the world, it would do well to appreciate that diversity has always been a strength. On the one hand, it has no problems calling itself an immigrant nation, but it seems to want to forget all the contributions and all the inventions that African Americans have made to this country. And if I'm so just to bring that full circle to your question, America has historically ranked it in the low 30s in terms of healthcare system design and implementation. And as a healthcare system, you are only going to be as strong as your weakest link. And as ongoing healthcare disparities exist amongst Blacks and Latinos and other communities of color, that doesn't bode well on the fortunes of this country. Now, that's healthcare fortunes as well as economic fortunes. So instead of being discriminatory or looking at it as if you're doing some favor, our country would do well to embrace the diversity that exists and to create excellence wherever it can be found. That uplifts the entirety of the country. Whites in America at some point need to get as comfortable um, receiving goods, services, and other such things from us as we have been with them. Excellence requires no apologies. Now, the one thing that I will say is that when it comes to healthcare, I am not interested in anything other than being a clinically excellent physician.
Mm.
When someone is on your table trying to die, the only color that matters is red, the red of their potential blood. And if we rise to that challenge, if we really carry ourselves with excellence, there simply is no excuse and no reason why this nation, why any nation would not want to benefit from the expertise that is embedded in many Americans across the field, regardless of race, creed, color, sexual preference, or any other such things. And to ignore that is to our national detriment. And we'll figure it out sooner or later, or we'll collapse and be overtaken by other nations who aren't as caught up in this original sin as America seems stubbornly stuck to being in.
No, I really appreciated that. And also, like, that kind of goes into also, too, you currently serve as the inaugural Surgeon General of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated and the chairman of the Illinois State Black Chamber of Commerce Health Committee. As the first Surgeon General of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, how do you view the role of Black fraternal organizations in advancing public health and community wellness?
Well, they're vehicles. The African American community is amazing in many different ways, both in the ways in which it has produced leaders historically. In Alpha, you can just run down the list from the first Supreme Court, Justice Thurgood Marshall, Martin Luther King, et cetera. Everybody knows many people on the list. So, we are able to produce individuals that just happen to be alphas, but the organizations, and this is true for for all of the D9s to some extent, also in the ways in which the organizations directly provide service. And the work that I do for my beloved fraternity is nothing more and it's nothing less than service. Whether it's the hundreds of thousands of members that are in the fraternity, we or otherwise, we endeavor to change the lives, to transform the lives, to improve the lives of our members, our families, and the communities that we serve. So the D9 organizations are wonderful vehicles to, just like the Black Church has been historically, and to some extent the Black Caucus. We have institutions in our community where people know to go, that are trusted and are organized to where you can distribute information and support. And that's what this is about. For us as Black men to have hundreds of thousands of individuals as part of our memberships and not to deal with the reality that the life expectancy for Black men is the lowest of any demographic in America other than Native Americans would be to betray the legacy that exists in one of our founders who was a physician. So this initiative is very much in keeping with the spirit of being Alpha. And I was very pleased to be able to bring that to the fraternity and work with our general president, who was a scientist and was having the same types of thoughts, but just needed the right partner to implement it. So, that's what it is. And I'm now in my fifth year, my second term of doing this for the fraternity. And once again, it's service. It's always service and service excellence, service leadership. And at some point in time, you look back and you appreciate the fact that people have listened, people have benefited, but there's always more work to do. But as much as anything, the thread that runs through all of the work that I've done is that I'm a lot more interested in building institutions and transforming communities to be better stewards of their own healthcare than in really just episodically providing health. And that's the beauty of public health and healthcare entrepreneurship when compared to being a physician. Too often in an emergency department setting, I have to return people back into the same conditions that produced their pathology to begin with. If we transform our community to honor health promotion and health prevention, then you can take care of yourself. You can extend your life expectancy by putting down the fat and eating things that are closer to the ground. These are fundamental lessons that take a transformative approach over generations, and we're here for that, and we'll get there. And this is part of the process, and we need more hands on deck and lieutenants involved and people who represent excellence that are trusted messengers. We can never have enough of that, and we certainly need more than that, more of that.
No, we definitely do. And then that also goes into like how does the brotherhood within Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated strengthen accountability, advocacy, and health education in Black communities?
That's right. Alpha's pretty simple in some regards. The bottom line is that, reach out and touch your brother's hand. And that's figuratively and literally. The level of community activity amongst the chapters, the districts, and the regions across the country is simply amazing. I could do an entire show with you talking about the 25 different national organizations that we have strategic partnerships with, ranging from American Heart to American Cancer to Alzheimer's, and on and on and on. We are embedded in the fabric of our community, but we do so in a way that simply is about service and about getting the work done. No one's walking around with the clarion saying, "Look at us." We are serious about doing the work and impacting positively the lives of our community and our brotherhood.
And then like also too, what does it mean to bring medical leadership into spaces rooted in service, scholarship, and social justice? And how can fraternities serve as a trusted messengers for health equity?
You have to assume the position. I'll give you a direct analogy. Um, it's only been a couple of weeks now where, I've been doing work in Zimbabwe and there's shortages everywhere. When I was there for the first time, I toured the surgical suites, and literally, I was walking through. There was not a lot of personal protective equipment or the type of sterilization that defines our surgical suites here, and yet they save lives. They do amazing work with all the shortages that exist. And I went through the rural areas and saw how many people never got to a hospital or had any access to healthcare. And I said, "Oh my God, have there been medical missions here?" And that's when I discovered that, well, there's been two medical missions of note, one by the nation of India and one by Tim Tebow, the American football player here. He took 10 physicians down or sponsored 10 physicians to come down. And it hits you like a bucket of cold water. If we don't do for ourselves, no one else is going to do. And that's when, as luck would have it, in asking around, asking people if, would you be interested in doing a medical mission or why haven't we done a medical mission? Kind of the response that I got in a serious, not so serious way is that, well, Jeff, we kind of figured that if anybody was ever going to do this type of thing, it would be you. And the response to that is say less. And, we're going to take probably, the biggest, as I said before, is 10 people that went over there. We're going to take 50 to 100 people over there and provide that service. What Alpha does locally is an extension of the same. We simply exist. And in the spaces in which we exist, we see the need and we respond to the need. With the excellence that exists inside of our organization, we're able to create strategic partnerships, alliances, service programs, projects, and contribute financially in any way in which we see the need exist. And that's what the fraternity has always been about. And that's what it's going to continue to be about. And I'm very proud to be a very small part of that.
And I really appreciated that. And that kind of like ties into also my next question of you're the author of 9 books, including the best-selling There Are 72 Hours in a Day, and has delivered over 1,000 lecturers nationwide. And also being a frequent media contributor to health and public affairs, what responsibility do physicians have to translate complex health information into accessible, actionable knowledge for the public?
Oh my God, for this, my colleagues are clueless. Did you know this is kind of interesting? Back in not in 50 years ago, it was probably about the 70s, physicians owned the entirety of healthcare.
Hmm.
everything. Now, today, the healthcare industry spits out about 5 trillion with a T dollars a year. Physicians owned everything back in the 70s. And there were no HMOs, there were no insurance companies for healthcare, all of the rest of that. Physicians took care of people. And because physicians didn't want to do the work, they wanted to spend more time at home with their families as if those two things were mutually exclusive. They basically hired middlemen to conduct the business of healthcare, and that's where HMOs came into play. So I bring that up to point out that physicians have been shirking responsibility of the administrative components of healthcare for a long time now. And part of that is noble. Part of it is that because the needs are so great in communities. If I were to say that to an African American physician, they would rightfully talk me down off of that consideration because there has never been a surplus. There has never been even an appropriate number of Black physicians to serve the Black community. So we are needed, boots on the ground, all hands on deck here, there, and everywhere. But as a class, as a group of professionals, we should be owning, we should be leading, managing, and conducting the services within our communities. It is not okay, it is not enough, it is not acceptable for us simply to be taking care of patients because when we are not there, when our voices are not heard and that void exists, the people that step into that void are not physicians. They're not public health professionals. They're not scientists. They are business individuals who care about year over year return on the dollar in the way that increases cost for you without necessarily proportionally increasing quality. So yes, physicians have to get off of the front line and get engaged. And I would hope that they would do it in a way in which I've tried to do it, which is to say, not to just join an insurance company and to become an employee, but to create and to fashion solutions that we know are culturally sensitive and even culturally specific for the wide variety of communities that exist in this country. Because no one is going to know what we know, and no one is going to be a trusted messenger in the way in which we have been when we took care of patients. So at some point in time, physicians are going to realize, and a lot of us do later in our careers, but even from the word go, physicians need to have that duality of purpose as a clinician and as a public health professional, because that's what the job really does require.
No, it really does. And like also too, when you look at the future of medicine across emergency care, prevention, policy, and innovation, what gives you hope?
Well, what gives me hope is that people are smart enough to care.
Mm.
See, we're transitioning, and sometimes you have to take a step back in order to see the success that you're having. This whole Dr. Google thing is a joke, but it's actually a real thing. So right now, people think that they can get on the internet and approximate intelligence. Medicine is not linear. One plus one does not equal two. You can't say that, I took a flu shot and now I have a cold and it was the cold that caused the flu shot. Correlation is not causation, as statistics tells you. But the long and short of it is that we have got to get to the point to where our communities learn. Dr. Google is a challenge. It's not a reality yet. But the whole point of, and this is what Simcoe is all about, it is about empowering you to be a better steward of your own healthcare. In this next period of time, you need to learn how to actually become the best possible version of Dr. Google. You need to learn how to integrate AI into your learning so that you can stay healthy and not have to spend all of your time and money trying to get well once disease presents. So I'm encouraged that people are actually starting to pay attention now and actually caring enough, whether it's because they don't have the financial resources to pay these expensive hospital bills. By the way, hospital bills, medical bills are the number one cause of personal bankruptcy in the country, or whether it's because people sincerely want to live longer lives and to have a higher quality of life while they're living. But we have to get this thing right, and physicians and other public health professionals have to play a role in teaching you health prevention and promotion and not just curative or sick care. That's the challenge. We're so much better now than we were a generation ago, and we're not quite as good as we're going to be a generation from now.
No, I definitely agree with that. And also, what would you say to physicians, public health leaders, and students who want to build impact beyond exam room but don't know where to start?
Oh, mentor. Everybody at every stage of life should have a mentor. Cheating is good in so many aspects of medicine and healthcare. And what cheating means is that, hey, every time a nurse whispers something in my ear that helps me take care of a patient, my response is thank you.
Mm,
I just cheated. The nurse gave me the answer. It's not about ego. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room. It's not my job to be right. It's my job to get it right.
mm.
So at every step of your professional career, everything that you've done has already been accomplished. There's somebody out there, and you need to grab the person who's the right mentor for you at whatever point in time, whatever point and place you are in your professional career. Lift up somebody. It's just that easy. And I've actually been quite blessed. So I'm so happy that so many of the people that I've mentored in my career are now colleagues, are now advisors, trusted friends. That's the cycle of life. And I need, the old African proverb, I am because we are. I need a crew, and I do my best work because I have tons of people who work for me in my organization whose talent levels far exceed what I will allow myself to believe that I have. And my special sauce is that people want to work with me and bless me with their presence and allow me to be the straw that stirs a lot of drinks. But my God, I have a lot of talented people who work with me, and they serve as mentors to me on some things, and I serve as mentors with them. So, there's a saying out there that your network is your net worth, and you have to be careful about that. Those 4 or 5 people that you surround yourself with, always glam up.
No, I appreciate that. And also, too, if folks are interested, how are they able to reach out and connect with you?
Oh, I'm easy. Google me. Jeffrey, visit my website at jeffreysterlingmd.com. You can reach me at Sterling at Sterling Initiatives. There's a million different ways to find me. Hell, you found me pretty easily yourself. So
Guys, he is famous, so it is very, very easy to find him. And
that's
I
right.
just really want to say also too, this episode is a part of the Men in Medicine series because allyship in healthcare matters. And when men in medicine speak up, especially about prevention, access, and equity, it disrupts the status quo. It challenges gatekeeping and it expands who benefits from healthcare innovation. And Dr. Sterling's work, it reminds us that advocacy is not outside the role of physician, it's central to it. So I
That's
just
right.
want to say healthcare should not wait until people are at their worst to care about their well-being. Prevention should not be optional, and communities deserve systems that invest in health before crisis strikes. So I just want to thank Dr. Sterling for using your voice, your vision, and your leadership to build a more equitable future in medicine. And everyone, remember, silence protects systems, not people. So let's keep breaking it together. And please like, comment, and subscribe. Take care, guys.
Take care.